Welcome to Cornerstone Conversation, which is a monthly podcast dedicated to the members of AF and AM Incorporated and also to the broader Freemasonry community. I am your host, Henry Davis, and our mission is to provide a platform for engaging discussions, insightful updates, and a deep dive into the rich tapestry of Freemasonry. So each episode is going to be designed to enlighten, educate, and hopefully entertain our members by bringing guest speakers who are pivotal to our organisation and the Masonic world at large. So join us as we explore the foundations and the future of Freemasonry, one conversation at a time. Welcome to Cornerstone. So this is our first episode of Cornerstone, and I'm very pleased that we have our most worshipful Grand Master with us, Bill Merrill. We have our Grand Secretary, Boyd Sparrow, and no title, Mr. Michael Baragwana, coming and talking about Keystone. Now, every episode is meant to be slightly different, and what we're going to do is follow a similar format each time, but we're going to get special guests in to actually talk about what's going on in Freemasonry in their respective areas. For example, our next episode will be bringing in the Grand Treasurer and also Boyd to talk about all things money and administration. Oh, so much fun. And then after that, we might talk to Chairman of Membership, maybe spend some more time on Keystone. In up-and-coming episodes, maybe some the Grand Supers or Grand Director of Works, and give a bit of an insight into what goes on behind the scenes in Freemasonry. So the format for the podcast is going to take a usual format, and we're going to do a bit of an open and welcome to our guests. Then we'll have a main topic discussion, fun facts about Freemasonry, a bit of an update on the building because that's an ongoing project with significant things going on all the time. And then what we'd love to do is some general announcements to keep you updated with what's coming on. Could be an installation by a lodge, and then we'll conclude. Over the course, we'll also be asking you for any questions you might have. So we'll give you a bit of a run sheet of, or let you know what's coming up in future episodes, and we'll give you the opportunity to ask some questions of our guests coming up. So I think we might start with our most important guest, most worshipful Grand Master, Bill Merrill, who's just been installed into the chair and become the freshest Grand Master in Australia.
Thank you very much, Henry. Yes, I'm very concerned with Freemasonry as it is at the moment. In particular, it's a very exciting time within the organisation. We must look at continuity and stability of the organisation. In a 3-year period, you can't expect to get everything done, so we do need that continuity.
And there's a lot going on in Freemasonry as well at the moment. We'll have a quick chat with Boyd in a minute. But Bill, I want to ask you, why did you get into Freemasonry in the first place?
I was invited on several occasions to join Freemasonry, and I couldn't because I was mine host at Port Elliot, and then at the Lodge Elliot. After I sold my business, they invited me to become a member, and I did. Yeah. And I think the community involvement of that particular lodge was very important, and that's how I saw it, and I joined for that reason.
Which lodge was it?
Lodge Elliot.
Lodge Elliot, right. Which number was that?
229.
229, Cool. And so was there anything in particular that attracted you to Freemasonry from the get-go?
I think from the get-go, their involvement of that particular lodge with the ladies of the lodge, and it was the first dining lodge in South Australia. Also their involvement with the community and the community activities that they were involved in. Very, very important, I feel.
Yeah, right. And so you've just been, from being initiated into Port Elliot Lodge, you've just been initiated as the Grand Master of South Australia and the Northern Territory. Can you tell us what that feels like and how you found the initiation and all the guests that came from interstate to see you installed into that chair?
Well, it was a wonderful experience, really. The whole series of the weekend was booked out, so that was important financially. It ran almost at zero cost to the association because people were there. How did it feel? Well, it's a great responsibility, and I hope I'm set for the project.
I'm sure you will be. And so, without reminiscing too much of the past, what do you see over the next 3 years as your term as Grand Master as being, I suppose, one of the key objectives that you want to create in the order, and how do you see us progressing forward as Freemasons?
I see the key project being the building at the moment, and we need stability and continuity to get that done and carry on from the previous Grandmaster, and will probably carry on to the next Grandmaster after myself in 3 years' time. Going forward, I think we'll go forward with our Grand Secretary and develop our business plans so that we can have that passive income that Freemasonry requires.
And that stability, so we're not chasing down membership dues and all that.
Membership dues, yes. I think we need to look at membership as a whole and increase our membership.
For sure, because the order's changed quite substantially over its history. You know, it used to be well supported. We used to have almost 20,000 members, 25,000 members at some point, and now as membership has changes over time with all community organisations, we've got to look at other ways to generate revenue and move Freemasonry forward.
That's correct. We need to look at other methods of arriving at a passive income. We can't keep our hands in our member pockets all the time. We need to have that income. And with our Grand Secretary and his abilities, we are progressing in that direction.
Well, we might quickly go to Mr. Boyd Sparrow, Brother Boyd Sparrow, and introduce. So what's it like? So you're the Grand Secretary of Freemasons. For laymen's out there, which most of you aren't, unless the link got leaked. It's kind of like a bit of the CEO of Freemasonry, and what you've been able to accomplish as well is you're connected with most of the orders as well, and you're supporting the whole organisation through everything. So I think it's amazing to see one person who almost has a touch point. What's it actually like being the Grand Secretary on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, like with anything, you're the central person. You've got those touch points, but they come good and they come bad, as you can imagine. So some days it gets a bit much, but generally, when I first took over the role in 2021, the Royal Arch and the Mark and the Craft were all involved in the selection of the panel for my engagement. And one of the key focus points that they wanted out of that was all for one for all, so they could have that key focal point. I think it's obviously a lot of responsibility, and also managing all parts Freemasonry under the 5 degrees of Freemasonry. But we get significant gains because of that. So any downside is played off against the upside, and the upside's far greater than the downside. So just being able to know what each of the orders are doing, being able to know, what we have on, whether it might be we have some stock that we need to use and there's leftover stock, those efficiencies, those gains are huge because we have it all from one central point. And then the coordination of the staffing and the resourcing. When we took over, when I came in 2021, we were coming off the back of COVID, so we didn't have a lot of staff. We had to downsize. Our infrastructure needed to be increased and changed and modernised. So all those things took forefront, and being able to do that collectively with almost a blank canvas goes a long way, because you can, with our 3rd or 4th year in now, we're starting to get the benefit of all those efficiencies.
Yeah, amazing. And so before becoming the Grand Secretary, you've had a little bit of experience with business, and also I understand that you were a pro surfer. Do you want to give us a little bit of background before you became the Grand Sec?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of things in a short space of time. I don't like to sit still. For anyone that knows me, I made a comment to someone yesterday who said, I did 45 hours this week. And I said, I remember my first part-time job. So for me, 70 to 80 hours a week is the norm. And that's been, whether it be through schooling and growing up, the same thing, sporting activities, being heavily engaged. So for me, I grew up, I was in the surf lifesaving scene for a long period up until I was about 12, 13. And then I thought I'll try my hand at surfing, and not too bad. So got into there.
A pro surfer.
Yeah, so I used to travel around Australia and around the world surfing and get paid to take photos and get in the magazines. And at 15, I was living in Indonesia for a period of time there as well, which was quite interesting. My parents let me go away, and you learn some very hard life lessons, and you grow up pretty quick. I was lucky. I had an injury, and then I sort of got out of the surfing scene and buckled down through school, and I ended up working at the Royal Outer Showgrounds and getting at some opportunities there. And I worked under some pretty savvy business operators, and basically got an introduction at 16, 17 into the business world, and loved every minute of it, and took all those things to where we're at. Since then, I've had businesses in cafes, restaurants, bars, had tourism operations. For those who know, who's fishermen out there, I've got a fishing tackle business. I have a wholesale.
Even though you're allergic to
yes, even though I'm allergic to fish, it's a good profit margin when you don't eat the profits, right?
Education.
I've run lots of educational platforms. I had a registered training organisation for 10 years. We delivered nationally and internationally. I currently have 3 or 4 businesses on the go at any one time. So I like to keep busy. But
I've
yeah,
also got your book as well sitting on my desk at the moment.
yeah,
2 of them, actually.
Yes, I've published a few books. I like to share my experiences, not whether they're worth it or anything or not. That's another conversation for another time. But generally, there's always something that we can learn from the past experience of others, and try not to make the same mistakes, or even just look at things in a different light. So, yeah, a little bit different. But my main experience is in change management and also executing from startups to a sellable item. So a lot of my businesses, I proudly sort of started from infancy and conceive the concept and find a niche market and then get them to a point that they can either be sold or developed or absorbed by another entity. Because those are the things that companies generally will like to acquire because they're too hard to actually do. And so if you can figure out how to do those things efficiently, there's significant gains there. And for me, I like the challenge of solving problems, which is why, when the opportunity presents itself to sort of try and help reshape our organization and get us into, like the Grandmaster Master said, into that positive net flow where we've got income coming in that is in excess of what we actually need to expend out, it puts us in a good position. And be able to coordinate the team together and move together in one direction. It's a really nice feeling.
So I think a lot of the work that you do is behind the scenes, in terms of like making sure people's reports are in on time, or talking with the accountants, and actually you've actually implemented some massive things in your short time as Grand Secretary so far. And most of that I don't think that the brethren would really see and kind of wrap their head around, because we don't really do podcasts like this.
Yes.
So over the last your term as Grand Sec, what do you think has been the most challenging thing that you've had to implement or change?
Yeah, so like I said, when we first came on in first 12 months, it was basically about rebuilding the team because we were coming off the back of COVID. The second year was more about looking about how we can streamline the operations, and we brought out Masonic Services. That was very challenging because obviously we have multiple boards in Freemasonry, and luckily being the role I'm in, I'm actually able to be a part of those boards in some capacity, which means I have the continuity across the boards, but also the ability to let everyone know and keep everyone on the same page.
So Masonic Services, essentially, my understanding is that previously all the different entities that we have, and we have heaps of them, they're all over the place. They each had their own set of infrastructure, employees, branding, organizations, different ways of doing things, different filing systems. And one of the big changes that you put in was Masonic Services to implement everything together and bring it all together. What do you think is a return that's really given back to Freemasonry? What's been the major upside?
I think the major upside is when we run as individual silos, you have individual silos, and there's things that we'll either double up on, whether that means resources, whether that means tasks, whether that's actually funding. There's things that we double up on, so we actually get the benefit of those efficiencies coming in. But I guess the biggest draw that we've had from it is the ability to actually bring down the running cost, increase revenue streams, make sure that we're getting the services that we appreciate, but at the same time we need and deserve. It's very easy when there's 3 or 4 different entities that we might be already having a good relationship with one entity and another party's getting the exact same thing for double the price. So being able to actually go collectively and say, well, hang on, our auditing services, for example, cost us X amount of dollars. If we did it collectively as a group, it would be Y, and we'd all make savings and be able to have those conversations. That's where our main gains are. But also, I think it's helped unify a lot of the boards, because generally, if you're on a board or you're on a committee and you're not sure about what the other party that has a little bit of a stake in what you're saying is doing, and you don't know the direction, then it's very easy to get lost into the woods. And so by actually having someone to be able to coordinate that across all of the boards is where I think that's really handy, because the right hand knows what the left hand is doing in most situations, and they're all supporting with the approach, but they all get a weigh in and a voice of how that looks.
For sure. And going back to you, Grandmaster Phil Merrill, what do you see as like the biggest challenge for Freemasonry over the next 3 years? Maybe not even in Australia, but globally.
I think globally we need to be looking at membership throughout the world, and membership appears to be dropping off to some extent. But going back to the Grand Secretary, he's extremely IT savvy. I remember talking to his mother on one occasion, and she said when he was in grade 5, he was called to the headmaster's office to fix the school computer.
Oh, really? Did he
And
break it though?
No, he didn't break it, but he fixed it. I'm sure that his IT knowledge has been of a great advantage to this organisation and any organisation that is.
Yeah, there was a couple of days there where actually Michael as well was sitting there with Boyd, tapping away, so we can't deal with things. We've had an IT emergency. Leave the Grand Sec alone. And how do you see, I mean, different organisations, I suppose, change over time. And Freemasonry has been around for, really at least 300, but actually we claim, much further lineage, potentially even back to 1200s and before that. Do you think that Freemasonry is relevant today for our next generation coming up?
I think it's relevant today, especially for young men, because it is a training organisation when you consider it. We teach young men to be better citizens, and in particular, have a greater coverage and greater knowledge about charitable work and benevolence.
Yeah, fantastic. And how do we think, do you have any thoughts on how we could, I suppose, contact them and frame them and get more people involved with the fraternity going forward?
Well, I think our Grand Secretary has a wonderful program going at the moment, whereby on Facebook, do you want to join Freemasonry?
Follow me around everywhere, by the way.
And
that's the plan.
Yeah, I used to get like, here's a new car, and I was looking for a car, but now it's Freemasonry. It just follows me everywhere.
yes, it's
I
there.
clicked on it once to see what it was, and now it's everywhere I go on Gumtree or anything like that. It's there. So, yeah.
I think that's a very important part of the organisation is our membership, and looking after our members is also a very important part, whether it be our members or their families.
Fantastic. So I think now you can fact check it. So I do have a bit of a fun fact that I like to share with you. So I've recently been reading the pocket history of Freemasonry, and I learned some things. And the thing I learned, and I thought it was really interesting, was the idea of what is actually a lodge. So my understanding, according to my little blue book here, and I'm preferencing this because Freemasons love to correct each other. So if you're listening to this and you'd like to, tell me that I'm wrong, please do. So my understanding was that lodges were actually it comes from a Scottish word, I believe, and actually means to be covered. So like a covered walkway and things like that. And a lodge was actually where the Masons would go to work on a cathedral. So it was normally actually on the southern side of a cathedral that was being built. East and west is generally the entrance and exit of the cathedral, so the southern side kind of made sense. And the Freemasons would actually go inside the lodge and work in there. Now, the next concept is the idea of a cowan. So being a Freemason, I always thought that cowan meant coward, but actually it meant someone who's hasn't actually been entered or allowed to enter into the lodge. So there's a lot of trained people and building people around in the Middle Ages who had kind of picked things up, kind of like in law. There's a lot of people who have a lot of strong opinions about the law, and they'll give you a lot of legal advice even though they're not lawyers. So the idea of a cowan was someone who wasn't allowed to enter into a lodge and actually work on the cathedral because they didn't actually have those skills. So I thought that was a very interesting fun fact, and we might get some more fun facts as we go along in the future.
Yes, we probably will. As you probably know, the monasteries were the first education system, and after that came the Freemasons. And the Freemasons had apprentices working for them, and they, of an evening, sat down. The apprentices drew things on the floor, and they were explained to them, just like any business has its secrets. Freemasonry had its secrets as well, and they were of that nature. And mainly it was geometry. And of course, cowans weren't allowed in to see that because they weren't members.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think, it's kind of interesting. Those secrets would have been just probably what you learn in year 6 math at the moment, and things like, basic Pythagoras and things. You can figure out how so that's probably a lot of what the secrets were. But at that time, extremely valuable information. I'd now like to go to, there's a small project that we've been working on, and I'd like to go to Michael Baragwana. But Michael, you're the lead consultant for the project of 254 North Terrace Keystone, a 183-metre tall skyscraper with a public viewing platform, a Marriott Hotel Western brand, and a general business and wellness centre in there. So, Michael, you've been the lead consultant for the project for the last 3 years. And could you give us a little bit more information about your background, how you came to be in charge of a giant skyscraper?
Yeah, sure. So my background, last 8 years has been project consulting, here, interstate, overseas. Prior to that, I was in financial services. I've sort of always been in finance orientated. But going back before that, I was in IT for 4 years, and before that in logistics and manufacturing. So I used to work down south helping making exhaust systems for cars. Saw that probably wasn't a great future career. Ran to IT, thought that was going to be the next generation's mechanic, and then went into financial services and have been in there ever since.
Yes, fantastic. So like we'll attend a lot of the board meetings together, and you actually have a huge amount of knowledge around how a building gets built, and the way that, the questions you ask of architects and the engineers and everything are actually very, very insightful, and you have a lot of value add. Where does that experience come from, being a finance bro?
So to get the best terms and to get the best outcome, you really have to know every part of what you're financing, right? That's probably the easiest way to look at it. But I guess the other part is just probably similar to Boyd. I'm a bit of a Renaissance person, as in the Renaissance was a period where people focused on multiple disciplines. It wasn't just about being,
It's really old.
That's right.
No, okay.
Yeah. So that period was all about multidisciplinary approaches, right? And I take a very multidisciplinary approach. So when I look at a project, it's not just about how you get the money for it. It's everything back to the organisation itself. So very early on with this project, it was how do we get members engaged and helping them make the decisions that they would like to make with the information at hand, right? That's just as important as to how you bring the money in. Because if there isn't engagement, there isn't belief in the project and its objectives, then why do it, right? Sure. So that also flows through, that's member communication, but then when you get to the hard end of engineering all the other parts, quite a few of the projects I sat in my early days in this area, where I was just asked to do the finance, I would still make it my job to attend every single meeting about every single factor of the building. So I'd be in every architect meeting, I'd be in every engineering building, I'd be in every meeting all the way up until the final lock was handed and the key was handed over to the owner. Right? Yeah. And that gave me this really broad set of knowledge to be able to approach into different projects. And what we end up with then is better profit outcomes and products tailored to the needs of the area and the people and the client. So it's really about taking that broad approach. Always had the same approach to financial services as well. Most of my work there was sort of compliance and product creation, and it's the same thing. What does the end customer actually need it to be, and then work back from there. That's it.
Now, far and above any other person I've ever met, you have an incredible ability to connect understand what somebody really wants as their core objective, and you generally know somebody else, and you're able to connect those two people. So, as a consultant for this project, what do you think it is that Freemasons, as an organisation, really want to achieve out of the Keystone project?
There's a lot of layers to that question. So, I think broadly speaking, the objective was to create income, right? But more than that, I think the organisation, as I've come to know it, has so many benefits to broader society that it needs a platform to talk about those. I think what I've come to understand is the organisation was in one day past very proud about its members and who would be allowed to be a member. And I think probably post-World War II became very concerned about its current members for good reason, right, with a lot of returning soldiers. And I think it became a lot quieter off the back of that. And I think there's a desire to be proud and loud again. Not too loud, but to be proud. And I think this project's not just an opportunity to produce income, it's an opportunity to create something that everyone can be proud of, and anyone who's associated with it can be proud of too. So they're big objectives, but it's a big building, right? So one of the other big drivers was to take the least amount of risk possible. And it sounds strange to create something so big to reduce risk.
That does sound strange.
Yeah, but it's a complicated site, right? So if we just park the membership side and look at the actual technical detail of the site, it's very restricted. There's a substation right next door. There's a massive power conduit going underneath. All of South Australia is built on clay, right?
And a river.
Well, there's no river. We've done the digging. We're okay on the river, but
no river.
but it is a complicated site, and so if something goes wrong, you have to have enough, if you like, equity or profit in the project to compensate. So, long story short, the larger the project, the more can go wrong, and you won't be in a loss position. Right? If we built 6 stories of apartments out the back and something went wrong with the foundations or access,
or heritage,
we'd lose money. Right? Heritage is a good one. It's going to cost
millions of dollars to restore this building the way we've agreed to do it. We've had amazing feedback from the Heritage Department about what we're doing and the way we're doing it, and I'd love to share that as soon as we actually have development approval. For now, I can just tell you it's the best letter I've ever seen from that department. That we're only able to make that offer because there's enough profit in the building to be able to really do this building justice, right? To really restore it properly.
Well, let's go to what's happening now with the building. So there's a big lump of machinery on the car park at the moment. What's it doing? Because I'm pretty sure it's in one of my car parks that I normally car park. It's very inconvenient. So why is it there, Michael?
So
why isn't it in Boyd's car park? Obviously not yours.
Yeah, no, we made sure it was not in the Greenmaster's car park. No problem there. Okay, so we're doing the geological survey, or geotechnical survey, and that's an investigation that we actually have known we wanted to do for some time, but we've delayed until the point we're just about to get development approval, because you don't spend money until you're very confident of the direction you're going in. But what that machine is doing is digging down 90 metres to essentially identify exactly what the soil looks like underneath. And it's too early to say what all 4 holes will look like, but the one that's been completed was better than expected. So what we're looking to dig into is effectively some clay and then some dolomite and then some more clay, effectively. But the dolomite's actually quite stable, which looks really good for us. So what's
that going to mean? So if we found, bedrock versus if we found sand, or if we found a lake, what would that impact would that have?
So a lake would not be a good outcome. But if we found, actual stone bedrock, it would significantly reduce the foundation cost and support a much higher structure. So we're already going to what's called the PANSOPS limit, right? And that's a limit imposed by the Civil Aviation Authority for the flight path of planes, right? So we're sort of lucky in some respects in that we don't need to go taller than that, if that makes sense. New York, for example, has a lot of tall buildings because the bedrock is about 8 metres below the surface, right? So you can just go down and immediately hit very strong foundations, build very tall buildings with, very basic construction techniques and still get a really stable building, right? We would not be able to do that here because we would either need to go down 90 plus metres to get to bedrock, and even if we did, our bedrock's clay.
And right? So my understanding is, I know this, but the engineers have also done holes around the place, and they're expecting that kind of clay and dolomite beneath it. So I suppose in terms of the foundations that are currently listed in the current planning, how does what we've found so far in the building align with what we thought might be there as a better or worse?
It's better than we thought. So when we
better means cheaper.
That's right. So when we look at feasibility, it's really like, what is the worst case scenario effectively? How do we know that we can build foundations? So the early work that was done quite a bit of time ago was, we don't know what's underneath there. We don't know how complex it's going to be. How do we make sure that what we design now isn't going to be wasted?
Yeah. And we actually found gold on that place.
Pyrite. So not quite gold.
It's pyrite.
Yeah. So it looks like gold. But it's not gold.
So you, because I have so I should probably return those lumps of.
No, you can probably keep
stuff.
them. They're not worth much.
Oh, right. My whole boot's full of pyrite.
Yeah.
When we got fool's gold.
Yeah, no. I just heard gold.
Yeah. So where we are right now.
With DA. So now we're drilling. Does that mean that we have DA?
No, it just means we're very confident of where everything's heading.
Okay.
So it's not a small expense to have engineers on site, so we need to be confident of where we're going. So we've had to give responses around very detailed traffic plans and traffic management, very detailed responses to craneage for aviation and how we're going to interact. And that is a level of detail you just don't normally see in the development. We've had to sit there and articulate exactly how the construction method will be done at the last 3 months of construction. So early in the project where we haven't really resolved what that looks like.
And why is that? So why do we need to give? Why is the crane, because we're going up to 183 next to the PANSOPS limits? Why do we need to give that extra detail around craneage?
Long story short, there's different types of cranes. There's cranes that are flat like that, right? And then there's cranes that are up like that. Now, if you have a crane like that piercing up into it, a plane could hit it, right? That's actually the risk.
That's that. Right?
Yeah, I hear that's bad. Yeah. So we're looking at flat cranes like that, but we're also looking at how long we can go above that 183 metre limit. Because you think about it, you build to 180 metres, and we're literally going to the ceiling, right? The crane needs to sit on top of that. We're already breaching that limit. Now, CASA will allow us to do that, Civil Aviation Authority, right, will allow us to do that for 3 months.
Yep.
So we've got to tell them exactly how we're going to go above that limit and be finished within 3 months. Because it's not 3 months and 90 days, it's not 91 days, it's 90 days or less.
Yeah.
So we had to articulate all of that. And that's where our joint venture partner, Pellegria, is really handy because, we're not having to go out to external consultants. We just literally write to them and say, hey, can you
They've got the
please?
expertise.
And then, great, they pull all the detail in.
Fantastic. So, look, out of 10, how's the project going and how likely is it to be completed as far as you're sitting at the moment? Because a lot of people, I think, are saying, will it happen, will it not? And there's a lot of complexity involved. How do you feel about generally how the project direction is going at the moment?
I never write any project that at 10 till it's finished, right? So
I do the same thing as a lawyer. People are like, how likely am I to win? I'm not answering that question.
Yeah. How likely are we to get development approval? We will get development approval, right?
Okay.
Like every consultant, everyone working around this is like the most exciting project in the city. And the feedback we're getting from departments is you're listening to us, you're doing what we said, right? We're not trying to fight them. We're just getting their feedback and incorporating it into the design, right? So I'm very confident we'll get development approval. From there on in, there's a lot of further work to be done. So, what would I rate the project at now? I'd put it at like a 7 because I'm really confident what we're doing. I know it's financeable, I know it's viable, I know it's great. I know there's so much more work to get done to have it finished that to rate it any higher than that would be,
Sure. Quietly confident.
Yeah.
Right.
Quietly confident. It's the South Australian way.
Yeah. Any last comments on the building? So we'll actually probably come back and do a more detailed interview about the building process, or do a whole podcast just on the building process and the date up to now. And we'll probably actually come out with a few updates in a shorter form. Any kind of final comments on where we're at that you think the members need to know?
I think what I'd like to say is there's a lot of stuff in the last probably 4 months we haven't been able to tell people because once you lodge development approval, there's stuff the government needs to see and what they have. And there's the huge body of work that comes after that. And that involves whether we're going to make any variations to plan or what. There's always a strategy with development approval. So you typically get what you need approved and then you refine it down to what you need it to be developed. And so that process, there's so much great stuff I'd love to share with everyone, but it would actually confuse the heck out of everyone we're currently working with in government to go, here's all the cool stuff we're planning when it finishes.
Right. So we'll leave the cool stuff until another podcast and we can update members then. Boyd, you don't have a microphone, so we're going to skip you. But we're going to give the last word to the Grand Master. Any final messages for our brethren out there?
I think Freemasonry in South Australia and the Northern Territory is very fortunate to have you three guys as directors of the joint venture partner with Pellegria and developing this building. Henry, I spoke with you 4.5 years ago and you came up with the bright idea of doing this rather than repairing just the building. Michael, I thank you for your input and it's been magnificent. You're not a Freemason, but give us time, we'll get you there. And Boyd, since you've been Grand Secretary and on this project, it's just gone ahead in leaps and bounds. I thank you all for your input.
Thank you very much. Most worshipful Grand Master Bill Merrill, Michael Baragwanis for joining us, and of course our Grand Secretary, Boyd Sparrow. That's going to conclude our first episode of Keystone Conversations. Tune in next time. If you have any questions, we'll make sure to answer them on the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.